If you would, give a good round of applause for Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, I am from Milissa, Texas. We are a Class 3A school district. We are just recently in 3A because we're in the northern end of Collin County, and what's going on in northern end of Collin County? It's a population explosion, right? Even through the economic downturn of the last 5 or 6 years, we continued to add students. In 2011, we were the 2A state championships, and they promptly kicked us out of 2A, said you can't be here anymore. And so we are now 3A, and we're going to be looking for a 3A state championship, I think. Our demographics, we are sitting at about, well, this is our breakdown, I guess, of demographics. So we're predominantly white. We do have, these numbers here don't really show, we do have population sizes in African American and Hispanic, enough that they do count for our state accountability. And I think that income number is actually probably a little bit dated. I think if we were to update that to today's numbers, you would be a little bit higher than that. It is the first school district I've ever worked in that had some of these things going on. I've worked in several other school districts, some large school districts, like 20,000 students, and we didn't have some of the things that we have in this much smaller school district. We have about 1,900 students, not quite 1,900. I think by Christmas we'll be to 1,900. I have been there, this is my 9th year, and just to kind of put things in perspective, so 8 years ago, we added our 1,000th student. So I was there when we had an elementary school, added the 1,000th student, they had a celebration, and I thought that was kind of interesting. It was my first year there. Something else interesting about Milissa is that 8 years ago when I started there, it was our first year to have seniors. 12th graders. 8 years ago was the first time Milissa ISD had a senior class. And we graduated that group of about 30 or 35 students. And it's gone up quite a bit. That now we have over 100 seniors this year. You can see our dropout rate's pretty low. The ELL population is sitting about 4%. That's probably quite a bit less than, say, Plano. I know Plano's here. And so that kind of lays out what we're sitting at right now. And it kind of makes it a very exciting place to work. As I said, I've been there. This is my 9th year. I don't think in the 8 years previous to this that we have ever had 2 years that our grade arrangement, our schools were the same 2 years in a row. Either we had to move 4th grade to this building, or we had to build a new elementary school, or we moved 7th and 8th grade out of the high school back down to this building. We're in a constant state of flux. So if you don't like change, you don't want to be at Milissa ISD. Some more information about our school district. We're spending about $9,000 a student. We have 15-to-1 teacher to student, or student to teacher ratio. One of the philosophies that we have at Milissa ISD is we have come to the realization that this quote from Warlick, this David Warlick, if you're familiar with him, he has this idea, or he kind of started off with this idea, it's been probably 7 or 8 years ago, of digital literacy. And it was something, as I was working on my doctorate, that I was very interested in. And so I took this idea of digital literacy, and that was the focus of my dissertation. And so I've conducted research, actually, into this area. One of the quotes that always strikes me is that we once had these rooms in our schools that held library books. We called it a library. Do we really call it a library anymore? What do we call it? Media center. That's because when you go and do a research paper, you don't go to the library anymore. That's what you used to do with it, right? I know when I was growing up, I had a teacher that gave me the assignment of doing research on Charles the Hammer. Anybody ever heard of Charles the Hammer? Yeah, I hadn't either. He is a king of the Franks, apparently. But I came home from school, and I looked at my mom, who was a teacher, and I said, I have to do a report on Charles the Hammer. And she said, oh, great. Go get the encyclopedia. My parents had purchased the Encyclopedia Britannica. We had all the volumes. It was right in the living room, right on the bottom of the bookshelf there, stretched all the way across. And I went in there and got the volume that had the CHs in it, right, for Charles, pulled that out. Guess what? He had an article in there. That's how we found information. Even as 10 years ago, that was still pretty common. 20 years ago, that was how we did it. We can't do that anymore. That's not how we teach our students to find information. We don't guard it in the library and then tell them to go in there and get that book off the shelf. They pull their phone out of their pocket and they search for it right there on the spot. And where 9 times out of 10 are they going to look for that type of knowledge and comprehension information? Where are they going to go? They're going to go to Google, and where's probably one of the top 3 search things that are going to find there? What is that next website they're going to go to? Wikipedia. You can love or hate Wikipedia. I'll leave that to you. I personally love it. Wikipedia is awesome. It is the largest encyclopedia to ever be created. You can say, well, it's not vetted. Yeah, it is. It's not vetted. It's vetted in real time. So what you check today may have been cross-checked and changed by tomorrow. And that's the reality of information that we have in our world today, is that it is ever changing. My wife is a college professor, a university professor. She lives in an environment where they must do research and publish academic papers. That's her reality. That process takes time. It's a vetting process. We call it peer review, is what it's called. That's the big fancy term for it, academic peer review. Wikipedia is being peer reviewed. The problem is with Wikipedia is also its greatest strength is that anybody can add information to it. So if somebody is the world expert in a subject, they have the ability to go on there and add information to Wikipedia. Somebody that, is a freshman in high school that doesn't know anything about the subject can go on there and change that information. Right? So Wikipedia understands its greatest strength is also its weakness. So we have to teach our students and our teachers and our parents how to use that information. We can't hold it back and show them how to flip through an encyclopedia, because now they're going to Google and they're searching terms and they are finding information that may or may not be correct. How many of you ever heard of the Pacific tree octopus? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of it. Not one person's ever heard of the Pacific tree octopus. Okay. I should have put this into the slideshow then. There is a website dedicated to the Northwest Pacific tree octopus that shows sightings of this animal in the wild. This animal does not exist. Do your students, particularly elementary age students, could they be misled by this website? Absolutely, because they do not understand satire. And that's what the website is. It is a satire site. It is intended to make fun of people that believe everything they read on the internet. So how do you verify the information out there. How do you verify that it's correct? How do you do that? What's the site when you read something that Obama's done now, or maybe it was George Bush, or or somebody else, and you see it on Facebook? Oh, they're going to do this, or they're going to do that. And I wish I had a specific example of one that I've seen in the last week, but I don't. They're falling. I just can't think of anything off the top of my head. But where do you go to check to see if that information is correct? Snopes. Very good. Snopes. That website, it's two people. Their last name's Mickelson. It's a husband and wife. They go out and they check out these claims, and then they either give it a rating of not enough information, plausible, false, true. They have a couple of other ratings they give this information. Guess what? Who is checking up on Snopes? Who's checking them out? Why have they become, they're running that website out of their house. Who's checking up on them? There is actually, you've all heard this. You will eat 8 spiders in your sleep during your lifetime. You've heard that, right? Whatever the number is. You've heard that before, yes? Do you know that the article that came from has never been found in print? It is cited by Snopes as the source of the information, but yet nobody can seem to lay their hands on a physical copy of the article. Guess what? Nobody can even lay their hands on a digital copy of the article where that was supposedly written. The author's name is known, yet nobody can locate her. How do we get through this information? How do we do it? We have to teach our students how to navigate a very difficult environment of true information, false information, and the worst kind, misinformation. And our school district chose to do that with a one-to-one initiative. And you say, well, how does that work? We want to use mobile technology to foster the skills associated with living in this environment. And we felt like, well, we could have done a bring your own device. And we've been doing that actually for about 6 years. It was not something that we went and told our parents, hey, we really want you to send a device to school with your child. We weren't telling them that, but we did have guest access to the Wi-Fi. And guess what? The devices showed up. So much, in fact, that I started off with a DHCP scope of, like 150 the first year we had it. And the next year, I had to open it up to like 400. And the next year, I think we were sitting about 1,200 addresses in that scope. We kept having to make it bigger. It's like, oh, we won't need that many. We're not that big. And then, we'll need more. Okay, we need more in that scope. You go in there and look at the DHCP, and it's got a little yellow deal on it that says I'm out of addresses. They were bringing them, and they were using them. We've been doing BYOD for a while. But we want to eliminate the economic divide for our middle school and high school students. You say, well, you guys are probably pretty wealthy. Yeah, we are. I would say overall that this is probably the richest school district I've ever worked in. But it still doesn't mean that we can solve all our problems. We still have low economic, socioeconomic students that cannot afford internet at home. And you know what the research shows about internet connectivity at home, right? If you have internet connectivity at home, your academic achievement goes up. just one thing. It doesn't say what you do with that internet connectivity. It just says the presence of it or not. The academic research says that it goes up. It's not a lot. But sometimes that little bubble, we call those bubble kids, right? They're on the bubble. Sometimes that might be the difference to get them to where they need to be, to make them successful. But that's great. That's a nice byproduct. Our real goal is to teach these kids how to navigate this difficult environment, right? So we take this information literacy, and we want to combine it with opportunities for collaboration and risk-taking. This forms the basis of digital literacy. Risk-taking. How many of us encourage our students to take risk? Isn't school the best place for kids to take risk? Because trust me, they're going to take risks sometime outside of school. Let's encourage them to do it in a safe environment, an environment where we can catch them if they fall. And that's what we want to create. We want to foster an environment where our teachers are providing a safety net for our students as they are taking risks to further their education. Who becomes the owner of their education in that environment? The students do. The students begin to own their own learning. Now, we still have the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. We still have achievement tests that we have to administer. Absolutely. That is a reality that faces every ISD in the state of Texas. Really, it's a reality that faces every ISD in the United States. We want to move our kids forward. And while that is important to us, don't get me wrong, it is very important to us, making our kids digitally literate is more important. Now, there is an academic basis for this. And it's very near and dear to my heart. They introduced me as Dr. Brown. I did write a dissertation. I did research in this actual area. And my topic of research was, do the skills associated with digital literacy impact student achievement? So do these finding, decoding, organizing, synthesizing information, do these skills, do they impact academic achievement? What do you think I found in my research? Yeah, they do. And I did this a correlation between STAR chart. You guys have heard of the STAR chart, the school technology and readiness chart? I correlated the data from the STAR chart with the data from the academic accountability rating system for every elementary school in the state of Texas. There's a lot of them. And they all didn't exist for the same 4 years. It was a longitudinal study I did over 4 years. So let's get into, because the topic of, or the title of my presentation was Droid University, right? And so you're like, he hasn't even got there yet. What's the deal here? Droid is short for Android. Why did we choose Android as the operating system of choice for Milissa ISD? This maybe doesn't work for you. Maybe you guys have bought into a whole bunch of iPads, or Microsoft's come out with some great deals for education on Surface in the last few weeks. We chose Android because of these following reasons right here. It is an open, non-proprietary operating system. That is the environment that exists in the world. The internet is open and non-proprietary. We want the operating system we're utilizing to mimic that. We have choices on our equipment, which may not sound like a big deal, but October of 2012, I bought a selection of different Android devices and gave them out to our curriculum team. And we played with them. We each had like 3 different ones to play around with. And we made a decision on which one we wanted to use with our teachers and students. And there were some things that, Google Nexus, very nice device, has no camera that faces out. The 7-inch model doesn't have a camera that faces away. We crossed it off our list. You say, whoa, why is the camera so important? One of the things that was important to my curriculum team was that they wanted the students to be able to create using a camera. That device had to come off the list. Then we started looking at other things. The equipment cost is reduced when you look at Android because they're not having to pay for the development of the operating system, or at least the base operating system. They are changing it. Each manufacturer changes the operating system just a little bit. But we can get, at the time, when we first started looking at this, I was able to buy 2 7-inch tablets for every iPad. 2 for 1. We were able to take our money and go twice as far. At this point, I'm actually able to go to about 3 or 4 to 1. I had an RFP for tablets that closed yesterday. And they came in between $150 and $160 a piece for one model. I didn't even give them the option of any model. I probably could have beat that if I'd have let them had any model they wanted. One model. They got them between $150. Every one of the bids came in between $150 and $160 a piece. The baseline iPad is what, $400 or $500? There are companies out there that want you to believe it is all about the apps. They have a marketing campaign that says there's an app for that. It is not all about the apps. It is our firm belief that it is about connecting learners to information. So when you get beyond the idea that I need this snazzy app here because it teaches math facts, and we get back to the idea that I need connectivity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever learning wants to take place, that we want to connect those learners at any given time. That brings up, John Halpin was talking about that online learning, and how, he said, and one of the things he said this morning was, is it a physical space or is it a time space? That's right. Is it a time space? Do students have to go from school to 8 to 4, and then they're done with school for the day? Or at 10 o'clock at night, they want to learn something. Should they not have the ability to do that? So let's talk about a timeline that we put out. I already mentioned back in, this last March, we moved to Google Apps for Education. Our student had been on it for about 3 years. We moved our staff email to that, and that was really, there were some people that didn't really want to move that quickly, because this idea, we really formulated this idea in February. Now, we had been talking about it since October, but it didn't really gel until February. What happens in February, all of you tech people here? What happens in February, second week of February, every year? TCEA. And I was on the way back from TCEA, and I had 3 of my curriculum people in the car with me. And I had our, we're so small, we don't have a math coordinator and a science coordinator. We have what's called an engineering coordinator, and they do both math and science. And then we don't have an English and a history. We have a humanities coordinator. So I had both of them in the car. And then I had a librarian, and the 4 of us were driving back. And from Austin to Milissa is about 4 hours. You add lunch, about 5-hour drive. And we were about Round Rock, and I said, "What did you think about TCEA?" And their first answer was, "It was an iPad conference." Okay, I granted, it is. I said, but what if we did our own? That's where we get to Droid University. And we kind of started, this idea gelled there. By the end of March, I had every faculty member at our school district move to Google Apps for Education. The reason why moving was so critical to us is that when you sign into an Android device, you can sign in with any Google account. And so we wanted them to use their school district email account. March 29th, 2013, we gave all the middle school teachers a device. Their principal was a very big part of this. She had been at TCEA. She wasn't in the car with us that day. When we got back, we called her on the phone and said, hey, we've got this idea, and you're a huge part of this. And she took it and she ran with it. She actually developed a professional development. March 29th was a professional development day for us. And she developed a professional development experience for her teachers without them realizing what she was doing that led them to the realization that every one of their students needed a tablet. And she had a design team, understand? She has a leadership team that meets with her, and they're like, okay, what are we doing on the 29th? Because that's what they do, is they plan those professional development days. And she said, hey, just trust me. And her design team said, are you sure? We want to be a part of it. And she said, just trust me. And they did. It was really amazing. That day, I wasn't part of the professional development. None of us were, because we didn't want anybody to get an idea that there was something out of the ordinary going on. Except when they got to the library, and the superintendent was there, and the school board president, and a few other people were there to hand out the tablets to the teachers, because that's where we launched. That day was where we launched, said, hey, this time next year, every student in this school is going to have a device. We made the commitment on March 29th to do that. In June, we upgraded our wireless network because, and I'll talk more about this in the panel later, we were running a coverage model of wireless, and we needed to convert to a capacity model, and we'll get into that later in the panel discussion after lunch. Then in July, we were going to host the first annual Droid University, which would be a conference all about using Android in education. We actually didn't get it pulled off on July 31st. It was on August 1st this year. Did anybody attend? I know Thomas did. So we did that on August 1st, and then the first day of staff development with all teachers. Now, understand that we have 3 other campuses besides this middle school campus. How do you think those teachers on those campuses felt when they heard that the middle school teachers all got tablets on March 29th? What do you think they felt like? They felt like, that the district didn't love them. And so I made a commitment with the superintendent and my boss, the director of learning services. The 3 of us got together and we said, we're going to find a way to make this happen. And we did. We gave every teacher a tablet on the first day of in-service, the same tablet the middle school teachers got on March 29th. And actually, the middle school teachers helped us pass them out. So it was kind of a, hey, the middle school teachers, actually what we did is we passed them out. They went to their campuses with them. And then there was a middle school team, a team of middle school teachers there to help them go through the initial setup. And so that gave that middle school, those teachers, some leadership opportunities, and because they were our experts at that point. They'd had the devices since March. October 2013, we're going to deploy tablets to the 8th grade students, and then in January, we're going to go to the 7th grade. And you say, why? And the principal actually asked me this, why are we waiting? We deployed a new wireless network. I want to put out about half of them, watch what happens, see if I need to make adjustments to the wireless network, and then we'll get out the other half. The plan is, past that, to pass out tablets to 7th grade every year, and they'll just keep moving up. They say, well, that's going to take a long time to get all the way through the high school. I agree. That's why probably next year we'll pass out 7th and 10th at the same time. So the timeline, looking back, fall of 2012, we evaluated Android. I will tell you, and I will be very forthright and honest with you, that at that point, I had decided to go iPad. I had decided that it was the way for us. I really couldn't see any other way around it. The Android tablet I had in my possession was running, I believe it was Froyo, and it really wasn't built for tablets, and it didn't really work that well. And then all of a sudden, all these tablets came out that worked really well. And so my superintendent said, hey, let's look at Android one more time, and I'm glad we did. We decided to start with the middle school. That's this winter. Spring 2013, we moved everybody to Google Apps for Education. And then in the summer, we upgraded our wireless network. Because when you go from 0 school-owned devices on the wireless network, well, theoretically 0, obviously the teacher laptops and things like that, to over 300, it's going to bring your wireless network to its knees very quickly if you're not prepared for that, right? So we started with a pilot program. The research shows that teachers need the devices 6 months prior to the students. Your teachers don't learn as fast as your students do. You've heard the adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I say you can, it just takes a little longer. Our staff at the middle school has really stepped up. Now, we did not just, give them the tablets and leave them and walk away. Every Friday was what we call a lunch and learn. Every Friday, a different topic. And they weren't all done by people from central office. Now, obviously, my curriculum team that had had these tablets for 6 months at that point, they were a big part of it. I did a couple. But we also had teachers that, took to it right away. Were telling us stuff the day they got them. Hey, you can do this or you can do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, hey, you know what? You're talking about Google Drive. Why don't you lead a session on Google Drive? Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Sure you can. And he got up and he did it, and then he did it at Droid U too. So during this 6 months, we did these lunch and learns. We have to make decisions, and we're still actually making decisions. What do you do about charging stations? If you give every kid a device, aren't they going to come to school dead sometimes? Yeah, probably. We actually talked about putting a charging station in every classroom. We talked to some other school districts that have done this, and they said, we didn't really need it. So we've decided to move away from that. But we are putting charging stations in the library and the cafeteria. So at lunch, some kids' device isn't quite making it. They can walk over, plug their device in, leave it there while they're eating lunch. They go to the library, they can plug in while they're in the library. We formed a leadership team, the principal and myself and several teachers. We are the group that makes that decisions for the campus. We call it Project Ubiquity. What does ubiquity mean? It's ubiquitous computing. It means one-to-one, right? That's what we're calling this, our internal name for it is Project Ubiquity. That is that team. That's what it's a Project Ubiquity team meeting, and there's 4 of us on the team right now. We'll be adding a couple people as we get closer here. We're very, very close. This summer, we had the culmination of our professional development. Remember, we were supporting them with these every Fridays for 2 months. We had these events. We wanted to have an event that we brought in people from all over, not just our teachers, because we weren't the only people doing this. Just a few miles up the road north of us is Van Alstyne ISD, and they had put out tablets in January of this year with their middle schoolers. So we called them and said, hey, y'all come join us. And we called anybody that would listen. I put it out everywhere I could think of to say, hey, come on. We ended up having 17 different school districts and organizations represented. We had some public libraries that showed up. Region 10 had a few people come out and hang out with us, and it was a great day. Huawei was a big part of it because the principal sponsors, IP Convergence, they are a Huawei distributor. And IP Convergence, when they heard what we wanted, what we were doing, and we needed some sponsorship, they said, we want to be a part of this. And then they brought Huawei to the table. So as I've already said, in January, seventh graders are going to receive, after this January, seventh graders are going to receive a device every October. We've talked about accelerating that and including 10th grade this next year as well. So we're doing two grades this year. Next year we'll also do 2 grades, and then maybe the next year all we'll have to do is add 2 grades, the seniors. We're going to do a 3-year rotation is the plan right today. We're going to get them in 7th. They keep them 7th, 8th, and 9th. Try to keep the same tablet for 3 years. What do you think they're going to look like at the end of 3 years? I don't know. I'm going to take pictures, okay? I'll just take pictures because I really don't know what they're going to look like. But we're going to turn around and give them another one at 10th, 11th, and 12th. And when they graduate, it's our gift to you. So let's talk more in depth about this Droid University. When I got back from TCEA and my curriculum people were saying, why did you take us to an iPad conference? And I'm not really knocking TCEA because they are doing a lot of things. They heard us that we want to see more Android stuff, and you're going to see that this next year, I really do believe. Because every session that we put in pretty much from my school district that was all about Android got accepted. So I think we have like 8 sessions down there that are almost every one of them is about Android. So education-based Android conferences. Right here, you see the list underneath of ones that are out there today. Okay? That's why that slide is blank. It's because there's only one that I know of. And maybe somebody can prove me wrong on that, and that would be great if you can, because I don't always necessarily like to be on the bleeding edge. Because you know what that means is you're bleeding. That's where Droid University, why we were like, where are we going to send our teachers to? Not any place to send them to. So we decided to create it. These were our sessions this year. We didn't just limit to Android. You see there's a Chromebook administration session there. We felt it was close enough. So one of the some of the sessions here, Android from a student's perspective. There were actually I'm going to give them the titles. They haven't earned them yet. But it was our graduating valedictorian, salutatorian teamed up and did that session together. And they haven't officially got that title, but they're on track for that. Communicating, the gaming and learning on Android, that was also done. That was done by 2 10-year-olds. They happen to be very close to me, as in they live in my house. And they did a very great job. For 10 years old, to get up in front of a group of teachers, their teachers that they had just had the year before in 4th grade were in the audience, and they stood up there and talked about Minecraft. And they showed, and they built special for their demonstration, they built the Berenstain Bears house in Minecraft. 3D modeling, built by 10-year-olds, so that you could take a class into that. Now, that's very simplistic, because you can get a pretty good idea from a picture book. But what gave them the idea to do that was they actually read, and I forget the name of the series. There's a series of books, Algernon. There's a world that it's flat, but the middle part is raised up. And they decided they were going to, instead of being like a round world, like what we're doing, so this fantasy world is flat, but it has the middle parts round up, and certain people live up here, and certain people live down here. And it's very interesting the way that the author designed this, but it's not, they're chapter books. And my girl said, let's build it. And so they built that in Minecraft, or tried to. They did a pretty good job, but that's why they didn't want to show that one, is because it was a little harder to see. And so they wanted to be able to show the Berenstain Bear book and say, hey, here's where we got the idea for this, and here's how. And they even had the honey trees where you could open them up and get honey out of the trees and everything. So that was some of the things that we did at Droid U. You say, well, we felt like creating an identity was important. And so we came on the name Droid University. And I'm a huge Disney fanatic, and Monsters University was coming out, and that's where I stole the name from. I won't even tell you that that's not where it came from. And I said, you know what, Monsters U, they have this website. They've had a website for about a year at that point that you could go to and like buy shirts and stuff. But they had a crest on there, and I was like, you know what, we need a logo like they have for Monsters University. So we started looking at Ivy League schools, and we looked at like, and the example up here is Dartmouth. That's very complex, isn't it? Yeah, that doesn't go on a t-shirt very well, which is really what we wanted. So we started to build our own coat of arms. And so we started with the shield, and we added some bars across the bottom. These actually came a little later, but they represent the 6 parts of the digital literacy model. I won't insult your intelligence by reading those to you. Then we added a red bar across the middle, which in the old medieval times was not called red, it was called gules apparently. And it indicates excellence. And then we had a black bar across the top there that indicates knowledge. Back in medieval times they called black sable apparently. So now we have the bars across the bottom, the fess, which is the red and the black together, that fess, that design signifies the bearer must always be willing to act for the well-being of the people. So notice that is being supported by the digital literacy. Of course, we had to add the Android robot because that's what our conference is based on, right? And then we added our letters. So that was the design of our logo. It took us a while to come up with this. I have a technician that is pretty good at Photoshop, and we sat down and kind of dreamed this up one day. And I really wanted it to be based on things, so we got on the internet and searched up heraldry and found websites that, kind of laid this stuff out. And so we said, you know what, we want to go with this. These are the colors we're going to use. And guess what? They kind of really matched up really well with our school district colors too. And so it just kind of really worked out really well. But our tagline, do different, do dynamic, do droid. I think it probably gives Google some shudders because we use the term droid so freely to describe Android. I know that they're probably really don't like that much, but we wanted something that had the alliteration. We argued about what words to use here. We had be different. There was another one in there at one point. Be droid. We argued about this quite a bit. That was actually, those first 2 words, the different and dynamic, have been so many different things. And I wish I had a list of what they were, because we were all over the place. We spent a lot of time on this. And you think, well, it's not that important. We kind of feel like it is that important. A good part of our drive back from Austin that February was arguing about which words to use here. And then we got back, and the other people that were involved in this, the principal, middle school principal, and our director of learning services, they had their own ideas. And so we eventually came to a consensus that this is what we were going to end up using. And here's what we end up with. Year 1, Milissa ISD sponsored. We brought in corporate sponsors to help us fund what we wanted to do, and we really appreciate them. We had a 1-day education-based conference. We will have it in year 2. It is scheduled for July 31st, 2014. The location has yet to be determined because I have 3 of 4 campuses under construction right now. So we are also going to do this here pretty quick next month. We're going to do a Droid University for the parents of the students that will be receiving devices. And we will also be doing one the day the students get the devices. They will attend a conference that day. We'll call it Droid University. We'll put up all of our banners, and we will hold a conference just like we did for our teachers. We'll be doing that with our students. Year 2, we're going to try to replicate that. Year 3 and beyond, we want to see this thing grow. We don't want it to go away. We want to outgrow our space. We want to have to find a new space. We want all of you to come and share, even if you're not using Android. Because half of the things that we decided to have to do with deployment came from an iPad deployment session that I went to at TCEA. There is a lot of commonalities between the two of just distributing devices to students. It doesn't really matter what the operating system is. So here's the things that we learned. You know, we talk about best practices. One of the things that I really like to talk about is what I screwed up on so that you don't make the same mistake. We can call it best practice if we want, but let's just really call it for what we really want to call it is, hey, we messed up here and don't do that. I don't think that we really did mess up too bad on number one, but we kind of went in thinking, you know, don't expect your teachers to be experts from day one. Support them with something. We did the lunch and learns. Do I think we probably could have done a little more? Yeah, we probably should have done a little more. But that staff has really stepped up. They've really come a long way. The new staff that was hired on this summer, wow, they're awesome. They've taken ownership of this, of something they weren't even a part of. Something we did screw up on. Don't separate your Google Apps for Education domains. And you say, what do you mean separate them? I have 2 separate Google Apps domains. 2 different logins to manage them, everything. Don't do that. I have to wait till the summer now to get the student one moved underneath the faculty one. Okay? I can't do it in the middle of the year because I have to delete the entire domain, all of the student account, everything in it has to be deleted, and I must wait 7 days. On the 8th day, Google says I can recreate it. Okay? Don't do that. If you have a Google Apps domain already, do them all in one. It will simplify your management. Because you can say, I'm going to put all the high school students in this organizational unit in there, and I'm going to limit that they can only share to other high school students and teachers. Or maybe I want them to be able to share to anybody in the world. Their Google Drive documents, they can share that to anybody. But the middle school students, I don't want them sharing to anybody in the world. I want them to be a little more, and I can do that now. But guess what? If I tell the middle school students they can't share to anybody outside the melissaisd.info domain, they can't share to my teachers. There's where the problem is. So we're going to run a year separate, and then next summer I'm switching them. I knew about this prior to the start of the school year. My problem was I didn't tell the students last spring that I was deleting their stuff. And so I'm not going to delete their stuff without telling them because they expect to come back in August and all of it still be there. So about March 2014, every 2 weeks I'm going to send an email out to all the students. Your stuff will not be here when you come back next year. Your stuff will not be here when you come back next year. I'm not going to try to save it. We're just going to wipe it out. Start over. Be very flexible with your selection of mobile equipment. Don't get locked into one device. We kind of done that. We've kind of set on this 1 7-inch tablet. Don't get too hung up on that 1 7-inch tablet. Find the features you want and then post those with your RFP. Say these are the absolute must-haves. And then when you get your bids in, decide on which device you're going to go with. The reason why I say that is that I can guarantee you that I could get better pricing by not being so selective with which device. But at this point, I don't have the ability to do that because I had a selection committee that said, this is the device we want. Guess what? Samsung doesn't even make that device anymore. So we have to change after this next order, this order I'm about to do. I have to change. So that's some of the lessons that we've learned. Here's my wish list. I kept talking about this socioeconomic gap, right? We feel that a 4G LTE network with LTE-enabled tablets will allow us to bridge that gap completely. Because now every kid in our school district, 7th through 12th grade, has an internet connection anywhere inside our school district. whether it's they're at the school building and they're on the Wi-Fi, or they're at home and they're on our LTE network. Absolutely, we want to see it. With all of this equipment going out, we want additional technical staff. I have a small department. Love to have some more. And then, of course, we always have to say we want another state football champ, right? Thank you so much. Anybody have any questions or anything before Tom comes up and makes me get off the stage?
Dr. Brown, this thing takes a minute. Dr. Brown, thank you very much. And I had the privilege to go and be part of the Droid University. And let me tell you, teachers, I love them. They are fun. When you start talking to them about technology and ideas, they're incredible. And I learned more that day than I learned, 30 days out of the month most of the time. Our next speaker is going to be a great segment into what Brian was talking about. He is with our marketing group, AJ Gupta, and he's going to talk about our devices and LTE and other things, how technology helps bridge the gap here. So AJ, if you give him a warm welcome, come on up.